I'm joined here now with author V.S. Holmes. Now, your book Heretics released last May and it received a 5-star review from Publishers Weekly. But before we get into that, could you just give some background into the book and the series?
So the series is the Star's Edge Nell Bentley series, and it follows a foul-mouthed archaeologist, Dr. Nell Bentley, when her site is taken over and sort of the center of this intergalactic feud, and she's thrown into this high-tech world, higher stakes world, and with really only a very cute girl to guide her. And normally that's not really her bag, but because it's attached to a cute face, she's all in. And Heretics is the fourth book, and it follows Nell as she returns to Earth after a brief, or not so brief as she starts to realize, journey elsewhere. And she realizes that the space that she left, she no longer fits in. And she sort of is dealing with those complicated emotions, and then also the very complicated world that she is thrown into, and her desire to hopefully protect her own.
That sounds really interesting. And speaking of the 5-star review you got from Publishers Weekly, just what did it mean to you to see your book receive this high praise and that review?
I was floored. I mean, it's always nice to have nice reviews, regardless of the source. But especially as an indie author and as a marginalized author, seeing my work be reviewed in such a huge, huge named magazine was just incredible. And also, specifically Heretics, because I wrote this book in a very dark time in my life. I mean, during the pandemic, of course, everyone's sort of going through stuff, but also in the wake of grief of my father's passing, and just to see my imperfect character and this book that was sort of ripped from my chest, it felt like at some points, receive such high praise and from such an incredible source was I can't even describe it. It was really, really wonderful.
And as this book released last May, just what has been the response from fans of the series?
A lot of them really, really liked it and are really frustrated with me as I continue to do my cliffhanger endings. But I think they were really excited to see a bit more of Nell's internal struggles and internal world. The previous books, I sort of balanced it, but I did focus a lot more on her navigating the high tech that she, isn't used to. And so seeing her come back to this sort of familiar world and then dealing with her emotions and a lot of stuff that she'd sort of put off processing in the previous books, I think was really fun for a lot of them. And, because we have all been dealing with this pandemic and all of the other issues that have arisen in the past few years, I think a lot of people could kind of empathize with her struggles and a lot of her anger.
Yes, and speaking of that, do you think it's a good idea to showcase that, these characters aren't perfect? They go through the same things that we go through and that they really can relate to us?
I think so. That's as a reader myself. I always appreciate seeing characters struggling with maybe the same things that I'm struggling with, or different things, but feeling similar things that I am. That's one of the great things about reading is you can see the similarities between maybe a character that you didn't think was anything like yourself, um, and then also find ways. A lot of my my own coping mechanisms I've learned through characters experiencing similar struggles, and that's really wonderful, especially when we are so polarized and so isolated.
And now that we're into 2022, just what are some of your plans for the New Year's and anything coming out for later on in the year?
So I am working on book five. Of course, a lot of release dates have been postponed, and that's one of them. But I am working on book five and the final book, book six, which is very exciting for me. A little bittersweet. But so far, Fugitives, which is the fifth book, which should be out this year, has been my favorite to write, which it feels like picking a favorite kid, right? You're not supposed to say that in public, at least. But so far, it's been my favorite, partially because Nell is really starting to change and come into her own. And there's a few side characters. I'm a sucker for my side characters. So there's a few side characters I'm excited to explore in it. And I'm really excited to hear which, of those side characters my readers kind of latch onto themselves. So I'm definitely looking forward to sharing that. And I'm also looking forward to stepping into maybe some new series and some new worlds once I put this one to bed, so to speak.
Well, if anyone is looking to get Heretics or just keep an eye out for upcoming books in the series or your other works, where should they go?
Yeah, I'm all across social media if you want to keep up to date with my inner workings. But I also have my website, which is vsholmes.com. And you can actually go there and check out Disciples, it takes place simultaneously with the first book in the Nell Bentley series. And you can just check that out for free, see if you like my work, if my style is to your taste. So definitely go check that out. And like I said, social media. I also have a newsletter. You can keep up to date with the newest stuff when I remember to send it out.
Thank you so much for your time today, VS.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.